Hello students, myself Dr.C.R.Chougule, Head Department of English, Gopal Krishna Gokhale College, Kolhapur. This lecture is for the students of B.A.3 Special English. Name of the paper number 8 is English Poetry for the Semester 6. It is now time to look at the nature and feature of the Victorian poetry. In spite of social, political and intellectual developments involved, the poetic spirit of the age was mainly a continuation of the Romantic movement. But there are some distinguishing characteristics. With the growth of the materialism, there began to appear doubts and disbeliefs in the religious authorities of the church. Three great Victorian poets, Tennyson, Browning and Arnold, did much to quieten these doubts. On the other hand, there were those who played upon them. Poets like Edward Fitzgerald, James Thomas and Arthur Hucklow came to be known as the Sem.6. The Victorian age also produced a new social aesthetic poets called the Pre-Raphaelites, who wrote poetry for the aesthetic pleasure of its word pictures and not as a vehicle of prophecy or instruction. These poets include D.G. Rossetti, William Morris, A.C. Swinburne and others. Further, in the last decade of Victorian region, there was a movement to upset moral conventions and praise sensual pleasures, introducing symbolism of direct statement. Poets who followed this technique included Oscar Wilde, Arthur Symons, Ernest Dowson and others, who are sometimes called decadents. They may perhaps also be called the first of moderns. It is quite difficult to speak collectively of poets as difficult as Tennyson and Browning, A.H. Clow and A.C. Swinburne, C.G. Rossetti and Thomas Hardy, D.G. Rossetti and George Meredith. However, we might say that generally the Victorian poetry is marked by the following features: a certain note of pessimism and cynicism resulting from the contemporary conflicts between religion and science. The 15th and 16th centuries revolutionized cosmography. The 19th century, by the discoveries of its men of science and by the rapid succession of inventions, revolutionized the outward face of life. The theory of evolution, which had been known since Goethe and to which Darwin was able to give a sound basis of scientific fact, deeply influenced man's attitude to nature and to religion. Continuation of the romantic spirit in the form of Victorian poets' fascination for the world of dream, worship of beauty and a mood of withdrawal. The influence of romantic spirit is noticeable in the depth of Tennyson to Keats, Browning to Shelley and Arnold to Wordsworth. Thus, the Victorian poetry is a continuation of romantic poetry in its feeling for nature, its idealism, its subjectivity and its variety. A note of patriotism arises out of the unparalleled material prosperity of England, the astonishing discoveries of science and expansion of the British Empire. The number of component poets whose work falls within limits of the Victorian age is so great that it is difficult to pass a single acceptable remark on them. Tennyson stands at one end of the period and Hardy at the other. The Victorian literature was highly productive, but writers were content to work upon former models like the Romantics. The Victorians tried their hand at many genres and material forms such as lyrical, descriptive, narrative, and reflective. The lyrical output is very large and varied. In descriptive and narrative poetry, there is a greater advance. In subject marks, there is a greater variety and range, touching many times and periods. In method, there is a diversity ranging from English landscape to imperialism. Besides impressions, the Pre-Raphaelite school was a major influence through unconventional treatment, a richly colored pictorial effect, and a melody's simplicity. In the case of poetic style, the ornate style was represented in Tennyson, and Browning's style was to a certain extent a protest against the ornate style, and Matthew Arnold was too classical in style to care the overdeveloped pictures and wrote with a studied simplicity. The pre-Raphaelite poets were a bit simple in their diction, but their vocabulary was more archaic and their mass of detail more highly colored. Thanks for listening me carefully and attentively. Thank you.